Welcome to Bloom Today. We have a creative show for you. We're going to be talking about following your calling.
Hi, I'm Paula Wallace, president of Bloom in the Dark, and this is
Gnny Paula, the single-handed serenity coach. Welcome to Bloom Today, where we talk about internal and external brokenness and how you can heal,
so that you can use the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. Hey everybody. So today we're talking about choosing our calling and following our calling and being our calling and whatever else it is that
There's nothing really to choose. Don't we always just fall into and do whatever our calling actually is?
Well, I think whatever you're doing by the time you're 20 is what you'll be doing for life. Like
that's how it should be, right?
Other than Grandma Moses that started painting at 81, or
Moses, who didn't start his ministry or become a leader in the Israelite nation until he was 80.
Yeah. Oh, so you mean we're not automatically stuck in our calling or whatever it is that we're doing when we're younger? We
Right. Actually,
have a choice.
Statistically, these days people will have actually 5 different careers. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, well, it used to be back when my grandfather was, you signed up with a local company, you started working for them, and then you retired with them.
Right.
At the end of your career.
Right. And it used to be if you were educated in a certain area, that's the direction that you went in, and
no matter what.
Right. But these days, actually, it's a lot of the graduates who are coming out of college are not finding jobs in their education. So they're having to go into all new areas and learn all new skills. So you just never know what's going to happen.
Which makes me feel so much better because in my life, I have been in, I think we're up to 9 different industries.
Wow. So you've broken the mold of even the statistics of 5 different careers.
Yes, because I have either owned a business in an industry ranging from real estate titles to a beauty salon. We have, been a rental landlord and that's kind of like real estate titles, which is great. But then in teaching and in the medical field and in all these
You're making my head hurt.
Oh yeah, and then let's add plumbing and landscaping,
right?
At least we have that in common.
We do.
We're landscaping. This should be a garden show. Oh wait a second, it's a bloom show.
Yeah. Well,
so our landscaping is contributing, right?
Somehow, some way. Well, at least we know that our past has affected our present.
It has, but it's a discussion that can really come up with the struggle it can be to find what is my purpose, like a calling that transcends just a job or just a thing to do or just a way to get a paycheck.
Right.
But something that is actually just bigger than that, more meaningful than that. Though sometimes we find that within the job that gets the paycheck.
Sometimes we do.
And sometimes we don't.
And sometimes we have to have the job that has the paycheck, and then we get to do that thing which we feel is our calling afterwards, in our downtime, on the weekends, maybe taking some time off to follow that, whatever that looks like. Everybody's journey looks different, but I think that, and God is creative, and He orchestrates in our lives all these different kinds of ways that our calling can fit into our daily lives. But I think that there's also the idea that, when we are walking and asking Him, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? And where is my passion? Because God says that we do have God-given passions that are inside us, that we want to have the purpose and contribute to this world the best way that we can. Where does that all intersect? And sometimes it does mean chasing after a dream that doesn't look like the way the world would expect it to look.
Or what other people expect of us.
Absolutely. So has anyone ever expected you to go in a specific direction, Paula?
Yes, I have had people expect me to do all kinds of things, and I have ended up doing something very, very different than anybody's expectations.
So no one expected you to have a television show?
I didn't expect me to have a television show. That's become a reality this year. Mm-hmm. So this isn't even, by the way, I started this journey a long time ago. No, it was only in the last couple years that I realized that in the Strengths Finder test that my biggest strengths were actually communication, verbal and written. And I was like, oh, that's why God had me write a book, because he's given me this as a gift. But I used to think that communication, verbal and written, were my biggest weaknesses.
Huh.
Funny how that is, right?
Yeah. It's actually something that God wants to leverage and use because you're actually so good at it.
Well, thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
So are you.
Aw. Okay. Enough about our strengths and all of that. But this is something that I feel like God has called me to, and it's certainly not anything that I've expected at all. But it definitely aligns with my passions of helping the hurting.
Right.
And wanting people to know that there is more than what the world expects. And it's been a struggle for me to start a ministry and start moving in a completely different direction than the 9-to-5, safe and secure, what the world expects, the idea of the guy in the trench coat with the briefcase and hat going to work every day and then coming home to the family. You know, that I had to put myself in those shoes since I don't have a husband to do it for me.
There you go.
But stepping out of that role was difficult for me to accept and to come to terms with.
There was security in it.
Oh gosh, there's no security in
there's
my calling, but there was a lot of security, or worldly security.
And that's just a feeling, because you really can
job.
lose jobs,
right?
And people do get fired and companies do shut down. But the funny thing is, while we're there, it's easy to say, oh, I'm stable, I'm secure, I have a nice budget, my things are all lined up, everything's great.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that's not necessarily in line with the calling or passion that God has for us. And the funny thing is, when you realize some truth about the calling, about what's possible when you're walking in that passion and how you can really change the world through your choices like that, anybody can find out what their purpose, what their meaning is, even if it's making baby smile as a babysitter, or being like this morning, the crossing guard at the school zone, and she was dancing as she waved people through, and I was like, oh my goodness, she brightens people's day every single day.
Yeah.
By doing what she does that way. Like, it certainly made my morning today so much more joyful to watch her do that. But there's so many places where we don't step out on our calling because of fear.
Oh, yeah. Well, the world operates in fear. That's why you see so many people walking through the drudgery of doing the same things. And we're all
things
trying
they hate to do.
Things they hate to do. And we're all trying to fit into a specific mold. And how are we trying to break out of that mold? And I think actually the millennial generation is breaking out of this a little bit. But I think what we will find with anyone who breaks out of a mold, they tend to just find a new mold.
Right.
You know, and it looks a little different, but it's still a different way to kind of fit into the mainstream, because essentially the world does operate out of fear and that need for security.
Right, and when we start realizing that Scripture gives us the ability to see it differently, to see truth different than our emotions or than just a cultural norms, Ephesians 2:1-2 says, "As for you, you were dead in your transgression and sins when you followed the ways of the world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient." There's a whole entire world and culture and perspective that sometimes to follow our dreams and calling, we're having to do the countercultural. The opposite of, and you can get a lot of flack for it. You and I have both had a variety of people speak in a more judgmental way about what we're choosing to do because it doesn't look good on our bank accounts, or it doesn't look good, and that we're stirring the pot on issues that other people don't want to talk about or acknowledge. We are going against what most people want about for us, or
what most people are doing, because there's safety and security in that. And we're going the opposite. We're saying we're not going to operate in the fear that the enemy wants us to operate in. No. We're going to step out of that, and we're going to follow what God has asked us to do, baby step by baby step, but we're going to get there.
But there's freedom in that, and that's the second thing. Instead of fear, it is starting to operate out of freedom, and that means not being locked up in fear or brokenness or victimization, not walking in a lifestyle based on bitterness or based in
just the chains of fear I mean, really, it does feel like we're chained to the mold, or we're chained to doing something specific. The expectations.
Like the American dream. So if my lifestyle is not giving me the financial stability and freedom because I'm choosing to do ministry in a way that doesn't bring in all this money,
right,
then that means that I'm doing something wrong and I'm not in alignment with the American dream.
Right.
My retirement account, oh wait, what is that? Like there is no retirement plan at this point, but I get the opportunity to step out and work to change the world instead.
Mm-hmm. And break free from that. Colossians 1:13 says, He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son. So there, just like this idea of there are two kinds of kingdoms at work. And even though, like I said earlier, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to buck the whole system to follow their calling.
Just us,
but,
right?
But there are just there's family expectations and there's other worldly expectations that you may not have to follow in order to walk into the kingdom and then walk into the calling that God has had for you or placed on your heart.
Well, because God has a specific plan, I think, that He's given us gifts, He's given us talents, He's given us abilities that lend themselves to being spectacular sometimes in a specific area. And recognizing that your design can be specifically for something maybe like major, mind-blowing.
Setting other captives free. Even if you're just choosing your passion, you have the opportunity to help other people in that passion as well. Even if you're not actively helping people on a daily basis with your hands or your words, even if you are just being the light, your example, the example that you set has the ability to illustrate what is available for other people.
Like I said, the crossing guard, dancing.
Yes.
First thing in the morning as she's directing traffic with the bus stop for the school. You know, that wasn't that she was out there doing some whatever, but she was changing her world around her through just doing what she did with her talent, her music, her way of showing life and joy first thing in the morning. That was so cool.
Absolutely. And I love what Jesus said on the cross in John 17:14-15 says, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. So, meaning that we can be in this world, in the middle of everyone else, and it's not that we're asked to necessarily change everything or come out of it for any reason, but to change it from within.
Right, and today's a really neat way to do that because not only will people have a coaching tool, we do have a coaching tool.
We absolutely have a coaching tool. If you'd like to access that coaching tool, you can go to our website. You can go to bloomtodaytv.com, and you can download that tool. It's a couple sheets of paper, which will go through the lesson we've just talked about, and it will also give you some baby steps and some questions to help you apply this to your life, to step out and follow your calling a little bit more closely.
That's awesome, and I'm so excited about our guest today because I met him a couple years ago, and he's an artist whose art has just completely blown me away.
Yeah, we've actually had a piece on the show already.
Yes,
so
and
I'm excited to have him
because
here.
we can't help it. But he's actually going to be here and get to share a little bit about his journey into creating this art. And I'm super, super excited.
Yeah, let's bring him on. Stephen Sawyer, will you please join us in the kitchen?
Do you mind giving him a hand, Jenny?
Not at all, Stephen. This hand's for you.
And now for an awkward moment of silence. Nice grip.
Thank you.
Yes.
I work really hard on that. Thank you for joining us, Stephen.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. We've put some of your art on display here previously, and so to have you here in person is just a real treat for us.
Thank you.
And speaking of changing the world with our callings and whatever, you didn't start painting this stuff like at 5 years old, right?
Well, not that.
Not this stuff? You didn't paint these paintings like instantly, as a toddler?
No, but I did find out early on in kindergarten that my stickmen were apparently superior.
I
believe that.
Well, yeah, there were two little guys. They were arguing over whose art was better, and they came